Fear and hope. Fear is one of the strongest emotions that every person has had since the beginning of human history. It is a natural feeling that will never leave a person throughout his life. It is one of the facts that reveal the helplessness of human being. The fear of Allah, which the Quran tells us, does not alienate people from Allah. On the contrary, it brings people closer to God and connects them. In Holy Quran it is mentioned about both afterlife and worldly fears. These are hereafter fears, such as the fear of God, the fear of hell, the fear of straying from the true path, and worldly fears such as fear of death, fear of poverty, fear of illness. Allah has commanded us in various verses in the Holy Quran that we should fear Him. It is written, Ali Imran Surah verse number 102, O believers! Fear Allah as He should be feared, and see that you do not die save in the state of submission to Allah. Nowadays, human beings are struggling and writhing in pain. The masses, who have moved away from their own line of humanity for years, are quite anxious and hopeless about the future. No matter how terrible the situation we are in, there is no reason to be hopeless for ourselves and humanity. Hope requires faith, and people who believe are hopeful. When hope enters a heart full of faith, worldly causes are overcome. If a person walks on the straight path commanded by Allah, that person will not feel hopelessness and pessimism. Hope keeps society and people alive both intellectually and practically. A person who has lost hope is like a person who is paralyzed. A paralyzed person cannot think of anything other than his illness, and his movements slow down. This situation leads him to death, first mentally and then physically. In Al-Hijr Surah verse 56, it is written that Prophet Abraham addressed the angels that came to him. He exclaimed, "Who would despair of mercy of their Lord except the misguided?" Hope grows as a result of a person discovering his own soul and sensing the virtues given by Allah within himself. A person who understands this establishes a relationship with Allah and attains a power and strength that can do anything. A man who knows that the universe has a literal owner and ruler never falls into despair. The prophets were able to save themselves and their ummah from the most difficult situations thanks to their faith and hope in Allah. Prophets struggled with evil and powerful rulers and their people. Sometimes they were imprisoned, sometimes they were insulted, sometimes they were stoned, but never despaired. In the end, Allah and His prophets have always been victorious. Faith and hope are the two greatest wealth of human beings. Faith leads people to monotheism, and monotheism leads people to submission. With this submission, trust comes into being, and one gains spiritual strength and power against all events. With this spiritual strength, he always remains hopeful, referring his events to Allah. It is necessary to believe that Islam will always be dominant and victorious. There can be no fear or despair in this. Believers should always be hopeful and eager in this regard. In addition, a person must live his life between fear and hope. He should feel fear before committing a sin, and even if he commits a sin despite being afraid, he should be hopeful that Allah will forgive him afterward and repent. In this way, one should follow the right paths with hope, and not follow the crooked paths with fear. One should neither despair of Allah's mercy nor be safe from His punishment. It is also important to stay between fear and hope during worship, so that human tries to increase the quality and acceptability of worship. In the Surah Az-Zumar verse number 53, Allah calls out to the Prophet Muhammad as follows, "Say, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves by sinning, do not despair of mercy of Allah. Indeed Allah forgives all sins. Indeed it is He who is the forgiving, the merciful." May Allah grant all believers to live between fear and hope and to die with faith.